everybody. I hope you're out there. Please forgive me. This is the very first time I have ever done a Zoom. So I have no idea what I'm doing, but it's going to be new for me. But thank you all for joining me. Thank goodness that you didn't have to drive in, because I literally blew into the parking lot. Today was just absolutely crazy. So anyway, we're going to get started. And like Sarah said, I am out working in the field all the time. I'm out with the plants, out with the shrubs, trees. So I've got a hands-on experience doing this. So I like to dig in the dirt. So anyway, let's get started. Go to the first screen. Okay, what am I doing here? Click the mouse once, I did. Nothing's happening. Oh, there we go. Sorry, told you it was my first time. All right. We live in Kansas. So if you can garden in Kansas, you can garden anywhere. Seriously. Just look at the past month. Look at all the ups and downs, the weather, the extreme wind, the extreme cold. Was it last year or the year before where we had snow on Easter? It's crazy. So we never know what to expect. Everybody asks me, well, when do I plant this? And when do I plant that? Or when do I turn my sprinklers on? And I'm always saying, well, it all depends. So I kind of look at the 10-day forecast when it's okay to plant, that type of thing. But in our spring cleanup, it's pretty much all of March and April that you're going to be doing all these things that we're going to be talking about. So, and just to know, you don't want to do too much cleanup in the fall, because it helps protect beneficial insects environments, like all the leaves that are on the ground, or the grasses that we haven't cut down, or the bushes, or just any kind of debris. All of these beneficial insects live in that environment. So if we clean up too early, like too early in February, we're destroying their environment and the protection that they have. So the very first thing that you want to do is, if you have any type of ornamental grasses, and this can be bunny grasses, pampas grass, maiden grasses, even your variegated liriope, all of these things need to be cut down now so that all the new growth can come up in between that. And of course, just like today, we have wind. So the easiest thing to do is we run twine, or mostly duct tape, all the way around the bottom of your ornamental grass, and that keeps it all intact. And then you can use your hedge trimmers to cut below that tape so that all of your pampas grass will just be in a bundle, and it's not going to fly away to the neighbor's house. That might be good or bad. You'll have less cleanup in a windy day. But anyway, that's the best way that we found to do that. And then it's also a perfect time for you to divide grasses. So like if you have the big pampas grass and you know how it dies out in the middle, that's because sun isn't able to get to that center point. So eventually, when you start cleaning that out, you kind of have a hole in the center there. So now would be a perfect time for you just to dig up maybe a couple sections around that side of it, maybe divide it, put it in different parts of your yard if you want to, or you can just keep on going like you are. But now is the perfect time to divide it. And just remember that your sprinklers probably aren't on yet. So if you do this type of thing early, you want to just kind of put a garden hose on it and keep it watered during these dry periods if we don't have any rain or anything before you turn your sprinklers on. And liriope is the next thing. This is the big blue liriope, or a lot of people call it monkey grass. And it's pretty invasive. So if you've got this and it was originally planted as a border for you, Now you want to maybe go take your shovel. I hope everybody can see this arrow. You might want to take your shovel and then throw all this away or get rid of it so that you get back to that original border that you planted it in the first place. And then you can take a weed eater, clippers, just depending on how much grass you have, and just cut it all the way down to the ground. And then this here is called a silvery proof variegated liriope. And it sometimes, if we have a nice winter, it can winter through and still look actually pretty good. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just take the clippers and just clip around the brown, around the outside edges, and that's good enough. But the variegated liriope, I love so much more because it's not invasive like the big blue, and it stays in that little tiny clump, and you can still plant it like a border. You just see the individual clumps to it. So that's the difference between the two. And then bulbs. All your bulbs should be popping up right now. When I've been going out and seeing yards, they're just about 4 or 5 inches tall right now. I've seen very few of them blooming, but just watch where you step because that's where you planted the bulbs. And of course, you want to feed the bulbs just when they're coming up. We used to think that putting the bone meal in the hole when you put the bulb in, that's the way we used to do it, but now we've kind of changed our way of thinking. And once you see that green leaf coming up, now you can sprinkle the bone meal around on the ground around it. And then when it rains or you water it in, it will feed that bulb. But remember, these are spring flowering bulbs, and they should have been planted in October, November, and December. And one thing I found out, this is a tulip bulb here, and this is a daffodil bulb. You can kind of see the difference here. If you have an irrigated bed or where you have your sprinkler system, usually tulip bulbs during the summer will rot and they will not return. And the difference is the daffodils kind of have a thicker skin to them. So they will keep returning and multiplying for you. So if you're on a frugal budget and you want something to return, the daffodils are your best bet. The only negative part about the daffodils is you have all that green foliage up that you need to, like if you're going to be planting annuals around it, you kind of want to tie that up, maybe a rubber band or a string to get it out of your way so you can plant your annuals. And I love surprise lilies or naked ladies. This is my yard on the left-hand side where all my naked ladies are coming up. The foliage is great. It's one of the very first green things that I have coming up, but then it all dies down, it all disappears. And then sometime in July, those lilies will just pop up when you least expect them, and they multiply like crazy. So you should, if you have somebody that has some, they may want to share some with you. And then we're always tempted to cut back the mums in the fall. You know how it just looks like a brown dead clump, and everybody's tempted to kind of get that out of there because they don't want to see that dead clump. It's actually best if you just go ahead and leave it, because that foliage actually protects the root system of the mums. And then a lot of times we're just planting those mums in September because that's when they're available. So they really haven't established the root system quite yet. So you want to keep that dead foliage on the top and then cut it back in the spring. And then leaves. Leaves are actually nature's blanket. They are providing protection against some frost, some late snows, protecting the grounds from drying out too much. So leaves are a good thing. On the turf, it's not as good. because you don't want to have too much leaves laying on that turf all winter long. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just rake them from my lawn into the beds. And it's okay if the leaves stay on the beds, but just not as much on the turf. And then like right now, you're probably looking out in your yard and seeing a bunch of dead, and you don't know if it's going to come back or not. Sometimes plants look really dead, but they're not. They just haven't greened up. They haven't got that life back into them. Some examples are the hardy hibiscus, the butterfly bushes, the crepe myrtles, especially. They're the very latest thing to green up. I don't know how many times somebody has told me to dig up a crepe myrtle because I don't like it. It looks dead. And I said, no, it's not dead. Just wait a little bit, be patient. And I think as gardeners, we're not as patient as we should be. We want everything instant, but on your crepe myrtles, please, you just gotta wait. And then here's a good way to tell is if it bends, it's still alive. It's still got life in it. But if it just snaps off and breaks, usually you'll want to cut that down to the ground. Or if it's a bigger plant, if you scratch the bark and if it's green on the inside, then it still has life in it. So those are two really good ways to just tell if it's going to come back or not. I always tell my people out in the field, if you're not sure if it's a perennial or an annual, and it bends and breaks, go ahead and cut it back. And then that way the roots are still there and it is going to come back for you or come up from the roots, so to speak. Deadheading, now's the time to where you're wanting to dead all your coneflowers, your milkweed, black-eyed Susans, anything that is still standing from last year that you probably didn't take care of. And I like just to let the seeds fall because that's when you're going to get the seed propagation from like the black-eyed Susans and especially the milkweed. We all need to be planting some milkweed because that's the only thing the monarch butterflies feed on. So try to do that as much as you can. Just even if you have to take 2 cuts, I think I've got another picture here to where I would go through and I would cut off just the tops of all these. And I know it's going to be extra work, but if you want them to seed and you want that bed to spread, just cut all those heads off and then go back and do a single cut, another extra cut, and take that stem all the way down to the ground. And then that way you get the best of both worlds. You have the seeds drop, it adds nutrients back into the soil, and then you clean out the stems at the same time. Things like daylilies, you usually just have to kind of take your clippers and cut those back down to the ground. We're basically going through and doing a spring cleanup now from everything that the winter and the fall damage did for us. And this is one thing it took me a few years to learn is on your autumn joys or your sedums, you know how like one day you'll go out there and they're all in full bloom and looking beautiful. And then it looks like somebody just sat in the middle of the plant and they're all just falling over. Well, it's because they got too top heavy. So if we can learn to remember, you know how you pinch back your mums until July 4th? Well, you can do that the same way with your sedums. Is just pinch them back, keep them a little bit short until the 4th of July. And then the stalk will be shorter, a little bit heavier and more stout. And then you'll get the blooms more upright. So you might try that this year. The main thing is to remember to do it. And when I say pinching back, you see where the head is now? Just imagine if none of these heads were on it, just like a mum, and all you have is the green foliage, where you just want to keep pinching these stems back. And you could probably even do it with your fingernail or just your hand clippers and just keep pinching that back. And then you'll get the shorter stalk. And then this is what we do. This is what they're looking like now, probably. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your clippers and just clip all these down to the ground, and then you'll throw the rest away. So that's a little bit on Live Forevers, Autumn Joys, any of your sedums. And same thing with catmint. Catmint has become very, very popular right now. It is hardy, it's drought tolerant. It gives you those pretty purple flowers. One thing I have learned that is I tend to look at commercial applications and like at the front of homeowners associations and see what they're planting. And then because they don't get as much attention as our gardens do, our gardens, we can go out there and hand water and deadhead and pay a little bit more attention to them. But commercial applications don't get as much luxury of that. You can't just take out a hose and water. So those plants are more hardy and more forgiving and more showy. So you might take a look at commercial applications like that and see what they're doing. And then see where the green is, just right here in the middle. So you're just going to take your clippers and cut all the way around there. So when you get done, all you're going to see is that green growth. Same thing with a mum, those type of things. And on catmint, sometimes if you shear that back after it blooms, after the blooms have faded, you might get lucky enough to get a second bloom out of it. Hope you're still all out there. Okay, and hardy hibiscus. This is what your hardy hibiscus looks like. It looks deader than I'll get at, right? But it's not. Again, you just want to cut that all the way back to the stem and then it will regrow. But this is a difference between plants. This is a hollyhock that has popped up in the middle of my hardy hibiscus. So you never know when things are going to green up, or, like I was saying about the crepe myrtles, how they're so late in coming out. So just use patience. Some things will green up faster than others. Hostas, one of my favorite plants. You can't go wrong with. I've never met a hosta I don't like. Every single variety I feel like is hardy. They have their different characteristics, the variegation in them. Guacamole is a huge green brown. Sub and substance is monstrous. All of them are different, but you should never cut them. You should wait. And even at the end of the year, if they've gone through a frost and how they look like frozen lettuce, you don't want to cut them back. Just leave them, just let them be. And then in spring, like right now, you don't even need clippers. All you need is your hand to reach down like that, and all that foliage will just come up. That's all they need. And this lower picture here, that was in one of our master gardener tours, and actually a master gardener, Laura Knight, she ignored all the spacing on the tags on the hostas, which created this beautiful, lush, full shade garden to where it's just, all of them are touching each other. They all get along. They're all kind of overlapping each other. So sometimes in gardening, we ignore the rules, so to speak, and it's okay, and it works out. And just like when I plant annuals, I ignore the spacing on them because annuals don't grow as much as, it's not as important as like a shrub or a tree where you really need to pay attention to that spacing. Red twig dogwoods, you never want to trim them at the top. You always want to come back in any brown stem that you see. You want to follow that brown stem all the way down to the bottom and cut down that brown stem, because all the new growth is your red twigs. So you never want to trim it at the top. You want to follow it down here and cut only the old wood. And then you always trim shrubs after they bloom. I bet everybody has driven around downtown or along the highways. You're always, these are the first things you see is the phlox and of course the forsythia. It shows magnificent and I wish it lasted longer, but that's what you're seeing right now is blooming is the forsythia. And it is a huge plant. It needs a lot of space to just kind of fan out. But after it blooms, it's okay to trim it back. So just always keep that in mind. Trim after they bloom. Same thing with quince. Quince is another thing that you're seeing right now. And if it doesn't get a lot of care, this is kind of what it looks like, kind of a jumbled mess, so to speak. So you kind of want to go in there and start thinning it out. Again, I'm sorry to keep repeating myself, but after it blooms, just start thinning it out. There are several different kinds of cuts. This is called a renewal cut. And you cut out about 1/3 of the older wood. And you always cut the larger diameter branches. And these are things like lilacs, your dogwoods, like your forsythia, your weigelia, or that quince bush that you just saw. Even barberries, you can do that with. It just kind of lets sunlight in. Your branches aren't overlapping each other. It doesn't create that tangled mess like that previous slide for the quince. So this is called a renewal cut. And then this is called a rejuvenation. And it can kind of basically work on any kind of multi-stem shrubs. I do it mostly with spireas. Do you know how, if you remember how your spireas grow, sometimes you'll have a stem about this high, and then you'll just have the flowers and the leaves up on the top. That gives you the idea to go ahead and cut them all the way down to the ground so they'll come up with that new growth. Manhattan euonymus got hit by the freeze last year real hard. You can even cut those all the way back. Your vitex, your butterfly bushes, and of course your ornamental grasses. They all need to be cut back. And don't be afraid to. When I first started gardening, I was afraid to trim anything. But believe me, they're more tolerant, they're more forgiving than what we give them credit for. And this is another cut. This is called thinning. And same rule of thumb is always kind of goes with a shrub during the growing season is you never want to cut off more than 1/3. And you generally cut this back to the last growing point. So basically what you're doing is kind of cutting off these that are kind of spiraling outwards. And it can basically be used on any shrub. And since you're not cutting off the top, you're not cutting off those potential blooms. And crepe myrtle. I get a lot of questions about crepe myrtles on when to cut those back. You can virtually do anything with a crepe myrtle. Right now, again, this is what they look like. So if I want that crepe myrtle to grow and get bigger, if I have enough space for it to grow, then what I do is I just tip, what I call tip pruning, and just cut all these off at the top. Or you can even take your hand and just run it up the stem and all those seed pods will fall off. Other people cut them in half, and then other people cut them all the way down to the ground. So this is one very forgiving shrub that you can basically do anything to. It just depends on how much space you have, what you want it to look like, so forth and so on. And crepe myrtles, I love. Nobody likes them right now, but believe me, in what is it, late August, September is when everybody wishes they had a crepe myrtle. And then that's when everything else is looking kind of tired and worn out. This is when the crepe myrtle shines. Now's the time to be feeding your hydrangeas. Evergreens, blueberries, grapes, use about 1/3 a cup. And you can see on this middle picture, see the kind of white ring all the way around the hydrangea. That's how you want to fertilize. It's just a white powder, and then it gets watered in by the rain. So it's very, very, very easy to feed them, especially in any of your blue hydrangeas, that type of thing, they need to be fed. Hydrangeas are kind of a tricky thing. Some of them bloom on old wood, some of them bloom on new wood. There are actually 5 different kinds, and they're listed up in your top left-hand corner or on your, I guess, I'm sorry, you don't have a handout, but they're big leaf, smooth, climbing, oak leaf, or pinnacle. Those are your 5 kind of varieties of hydrangeas. So like the big leaf, the oak leaf, and the climbing hydrangeas, they bloom on the old wood. So you do not want to trim those back, so they're going to bloom just like they are. But your big leaf, the reblooming ones, your smooth hydrangeas, your pinnacle ones, a lot of your limelight hydrangeas are extremely popular right now. And they're white normally. Some of them are kind of a whitish pink. You see a lot of limelight hydrangea trees, and then the limelight bushes. They're real popular right now because they take a full 100% full sun, or they'll take a little bit of shade. They have those big, nice white blooms. So they're very popular right now. And when you're doing your trimming, think about your trees too. Don't forget about our trees. They take so long to grow. So we need to take care of them just like we do our shrubs. And this is the time to where before they leaf out, before they're full, this way we can see what kind of the skeleton of the tree looks like, is a good way to put it. So anything, my first rule of thumb, or the easiest thing for you to do, is anything that crosses over another branch, that's what you want to trim out. See the 2 comparisons here? There's no branch that's, except for that one, no branch that's crossing over each other. So that's how we want to kind of thin out our trees. So you can tell how much easier it is to spot out anything that is overlapping one another versus to where when it's already leafed out, how hard it is to kind of see the skeleton of the tree, so to speak. So call your tree trimmers now. Go with a certified arborist, not just somebody who's a tree person, but you can trust your trees to anybody who's a certified arborist. But now's the time to do that. And then cannon bulbs. They're one of my favorites. You can't go wrong with them. They never get any pests. The biggest problem I've had with them is if the tall, big ones like this on the right-hand corner, if they're in a real windy area, a lot of times the wind will just shred the leaves, but they still bloom. They have short ones that are 2 to 3 feet tall, yellow ones, orange ones that you can put in pots. They're beautiful. Right now, as a matter of fact, next week, I am going to be planting these bulbs. I've already started them in the greenhouse like this, and I actually started them too early. They're up about 2 feet tall now. So kind of started them a little bit too early, but these here right now, you can go ahead and stick in the ground and they'll come right up. At the end of the season, if you don't want to second guess Mother Nature, you can go ahead and dig up these bulbs. I recommend just kind of shaking off the dirt, not keeping them, having a little bit of the dirt on it, just like this bulb here, but not a lot, because it kind of helps keep the bulb from drying out. But if you put it in dirt, it's going to keep moisture around that bulb and possibly rot it. So there are lots of varieties. Even if you go into Atwoods right now, they're selling them. They're very, they're just everywhere. And now's the time, if you got a lot of garden people out there, now's the time where you're probably even harvesting asparagus. I was in a yard beginning of this week, and their asparagus was already up 2 or 3 inches. So blueberries, your garlic, all your onion sets, your rhubarb, blackberries, strawberries, all of that, go ahead and stick in the ground. We're past March 17th, where you do your potatoes. And here's a little slide. I'm not sure if people can have these to refer back to or not, this presentation, but this would be a good slide to refer back to if you plant your tomatoes next year. And asparagus. Just keep in mind, a lot of people love the asparagus, but they don't like the habit, so to speak. Like this picture here on the left, you basically keep cutting it early in the spring, but then when it shoots up too big and the stalks are too big, it's too tough and tender to eat. So that's when I kind of call it going to seed. So you have to have a lot of space for this to shoot up like that, get all that foliage on it, and then you kind of have to leave it for the year, and then you cut it down all the way down to the base in the fall. And a lot of times you'll need like a rope or something to kind of keep this upright. But when you are buying them, you want to buy the 2-year-old crowns, if that makes sense. This is kind of called a runner plant. A lot of people plant strawberries just for the foliage or for ground cover. They're kind of basically most commonly two different kinds. One is the June bearing, which are the bigger strawberries, and the other is the ever bearing. And they're the little tiny strawberries that if you're not on your toes and not out there picking them, the birds usually will get them. But there are a lot of them, a lot of little ones. So they are fun. And like I said, a lot of people use them for ground cover. And this is how they go by runners. They just shoot these runners out. And each one of these little ones here will come down with roots, root in, and then just keep on going. And then you have your main root and crown down here. So that's how your strawberries work. Rhubarb. A lot of people love rhubarb pie, combination of rhubarb strawberry pie. I've even had a garden tour one time, or it was a customer's party where they wanted something really pretty. I actually planted rhubarb early just so we could see the pretty red stalks. I think it was a filler in a tour. And all your cold crops, your cabbage, your broccoli, your Brussels sprouts, your cauliflower, all of that can be planted now. As a matter of fact, I went by a greenhouse the other day and he had all his cold crops out on a bench. The snow, when we got that a week or so ago back, they were literally covered. And I thought, oh my. And then I went back 2 days later and all of them looked perfectly fine. So all of these things can take our unexpected snows. All your onions. And now is the perfect time to add compost to your beds. I don't care what it is. This is one of my favorites, the Cotton Burr blend, and it's available just about anywhere. Comes in a big sack, so it goes a long ways. But this is the time we need to be mixing that in before you add your mulch. Just start turning it into the soil. Empty your compost bins from last year. I keep one of these, it's exactly like this, as a matter of fact, underneath my kitchen sink. So roses like banana peels, your tomatoes like eggshells. I just put all your kitchen scraps, anything but meat, grease, of course, go in there. And then I dump that bin into my compost. And my favorite one, I don't mean to be prejudiced, it's a tub. It's like a 55-gallon barrel with 2 lids on both ends, and it's on a stand, and you just turn it. I've tried the bins, and I just didn't have the patience or the time to go out and turn it with a pitchfork and everything. So that bin that's on a stand is just wonderful. Every time I'm out in the garden, I just start turning it. And now's the time you want to go ahead and chop up, probably do your first mowing of the year and kind of go low. And I would recommend not bagging. You're putting all those clippings in a plastic bag and then you're hauling them off to the dump. Why not just get a mulching blade, mulch all that up and put it right back into the soil? Fabric or no fabric? What do you think? Yes, no? No. What it does, where do weeds come from? Do they come up from the ground? Where do they come from? They actually come from birds. They'll eat a weed seed a mile away, throw over your yard poop, and a weed starts. That's part of it. And just remember when you're a kid, when you blew the dandelion, remember all those seeds just flying everywhere? Well, all those seeds come from the top. And what they do is once you have that fabric down for a period of time, it starts collecting dirt. All the mulch starts biodegrading. So it actually creates a perfect growing environment for seeds. So you don't want that weed barrier mat. It will not stop Bermuda. It will not stop even shrubs from growing their roots in and out of the fabric. The only time I use fabric is under rock, and that's just to stop the rock from sinking down into the ground. Mulch and trees. If you haven't already, you need to remove all the turf around the base of the tree. What this does, it conserves your soil moisture, reduces weed and grass competition. An average tree can drink 200 gallons of water a day. So you don't want any competition around that trunk. You don't want weed eaters and mowers to be hitting that trunk. So this is the absolutely best thing that you can do, is just put a ring of mulch around, and don't do the volcano mulch where it's up on the trunk. Make sure you see that root flare, just like you do in this picture. This is a very healthy tree. You can see that flare. That's what you want to see. You don't want to see a telephone pole on your tree trunks. And now's the time to fertilize. It is so easy. Just get like a 13, 13, 13. It's just a granular that you just shake out around the base of the plants. But always, always, always read the label for the right directions. And this is the time to mow your cool season grasses down, any excess growth on them. It's time to plant cool season grasses like your Kentucky bluegrass or your tall fescue. But don't fertilize too much too early. What we have found is it actually weakens the grass for the summer, because fertilizer is kind of like a steroid. It kind of shoots that extra green growth up, but doesn't put as much energy down into the roots as it should. So it's basically, ideally, you want to fertilize in the fall, but a lot of people do now. And it's just, again, it's just a slow release fertilizer. And now's the time to where you want to apply all your pre-emergents to your beds and your lawns somewhere between April 1st and April 15th. So that's right now. And if you can plant it before rain so that it waters it in, absolutely even more perfect. And then just watch for the red buds when they come in bloom. And what this is going to do is you're going to stop all your crabgrass from growing. And once that crabgrass gets going, it's very hard to control it. So it's actually a prevention for the upcoming months. But it is not, the Dimension pre-emergent is not labeled for vegetable beds. So keep that in mind. And unfortunately, right now, you probably see all these pretty little purple flowers coming up. Well, that's all your henbit, and you don't want that. But the pre-emergent won't work on it because the henbit is already up. And dandelions, you're seeing all the henbit and the dandelions bloom. Unfortunately, we're all out there trying to kill it, but it is the first food source for our honeybees. So if you can let some of them go, please do. Dandelions are actually edible. You know, when I go up to Colorado, the dandelions are just monstrous and they're growing everywhere and they're absolutely beautiful. But as humans want to kind of get rid of those, we have all these perfect manicured lawns. So that's what we do, but try to let them go if you can, as much as you can. And just remember, all those pre-emergents, what they do is they stop seeds from germinating. So if you put like Preem, that's usually the name that everybody knows. If you sprinkle that out in your flower beds and you want all the weed seeds to stop germinating, and then you throw out your zinnia seeds, well, those will stop those from germinating also. So just keep that in mind. And then just think of granular fertilizers like a piece of hard candy. You know, when you put a mint in your mouth and the more the saliva hits it, it just kind of dissipates. Well, just think of granular fertilizers and pre-emergence kind of the same way. That's kind of a simple way of thinking about it. And then now, actually next week, we're going to start planting as much as we possibly can. Again, I kind of look at the 10-day forecast and it looks like it's pretty clear. So I plant everything I possibly can right now. And one thing about hostas is it's better to actually find a hosta that isn't all the way up right now, that is maybe only 2 inches above the ground. Like right now, you might be tempted to go into a nursery and find the biggest one with all that big foliage. Well, right now it's probably better not. It better off if you don't, because that little small one will just eventually merge. And if we get a late freeze, like we have so many times before, all that foliage is going to freeze. So it's better to get the smaller hostas right now. And the prairie bloom flowers, those are the ones that have gone through K-State research. And so if you see any of those on a label, prairie bloom, those are the ones you need to pick up. They've been tested. They go through our cold hardiness and our heat. And just think that our weather is getting hotter and hotter and hotter. So you want to try to go with drought tolerant plants, Kansas natives, that type of thing. And now's the time that everybody is turning on their sprinkler systems, probably within the next week or two, if you haven't turned it on already. And just make sure that if you do go out there and plant, that you do have your sprinklers on, or otherwise, please remember to hand water those new shrubs and trees before your sprinklers are on. Okay. And this is really important. Don't rely on the sprinkler companies just to check. Those sprinkler companies are just, I shouldn't say all, but most of them are going to just make sure your sprinklers are up and working, which is what they're supposed to do. But this is the time to where you need to take your coffee out at 6 o'clock in the morning and watch those sprinklers, because you may have had you may have mature landscaping now. And when those sprinklers were put in, it may have been put behind this small perennial or this small shrub. And now this shrub is 5 or 6 feet tall. The sprinkler is hitting the base of it, so the water's not going where it's supposed to. So this is the time to where, even though they're all working, you may have to move them or relocate them. Just kind of a common sense thing. And now you want to start cleaning out all your pots. I'm going to tell on myself here. I am not one to dump out all the soil, take a steel brush, clean them all out with Clorox. I'm sorry, call me lazy or call me cheap or frugal. I just kind of chop up all the roots. Some of those roots actually will add nutrients back into the potting soil. One important thing is look at the color of the potting soil. If it looks kind of gray or light colored, go ahead and dump it out. And you can actually dump it in your flower bed and then go ahead and add new soil. If it looks fairly good, sometimes I'll just add in a couple of handfuls of the cotton burr compost. But make sure those drain holes, I've seen so many too, like that have palms or kind of plants that have aggressive ferns are a good example, to where the roots go all the way down into the drain hole and plug it up. So these are the things that we need to start the season right with by double checking all these things. And every single time that I planted before May 1st, we've gotten a freeze. Every single time. I don't care if it freezes like April 27th, a freeze will come in. And then it may not kill your annual, but what it's going to do is just kind of set it back. So if you can be patient, just wait. And I think your garden will be just a little bit better off if you do. And remember, you live in Kansas, right? So everything is unexpected. And Prairie Star. These are varieties, again, that have gone through the testing, and they are absolutely wonderful performers. And just keep in mind on your fertilizing, usually I use a liquid fertilizer like Miracle-Gro or Peters, or, you know, where you mix in 1 or 2 tablespoons into a gallon or 2 of water. That's what I usually feed my annuals with, and that's what makes them thrive. Just think of all plants, no matter what they are. You got to think of them as a living thing, which we know they all are, but they need food just like we do. They need air just like we do. They need sunshine, that vitamin D. So they need water. So just think about them as a living thing, and they need all the same nutrients that we do. And hopefully we will all have a fruitful season, fruitful year. And you know what, every year I say every year is different, and it is. Last year we had a really wet May, and I had planted just tons of lantana, which likes the dry, hot heat. I feel like it didn't start blooming until June, July, which normally it greens up and blooms up a little bit earlier than that. And don't be hard on yourself. Don't blame yourself if something isn't working. Blame it on the weather, blame it on Mother Nature, because that's what we have to rely on for all these things to bloom and produce. But they need our help also with the fertilizing and the extra watering and that type of thing. You can sign up. Here's the K-State Horticultural Newsletter, which is absolutely wonderful, phenomenal information. You can sign up for it. And then also, this is the Master Gardener hotline. Even though I'm a Master Gardener, I still have the hotline in my phone. And believe it or not, I use it all the time. We as Master Gardeners don't know it all. And believe me, there is so much that I don't know. And I learn something every day, either from one of my customers or from another Master Gardener. I actually sent pictures into the Master Gardener hotline today, asking some questions that I thought maybe I knew the answer, but Master Gardeners know where to get the answers. And that's what's so great about them. You can do soil tests, bring them into the Extension Center. You can bring in a leaf. You can bring in a limb. They can diagnose it. They can tell you what's wrong with it. They are a wealth of information, but we all need them. They just know where to find the answers. And this is, if you ever haven't been to the farmer's market, it's a wonderful thing to go to also. Come out, see us, and go to the library on the inside. They are, again, a wealth of information, all kinds of free handouts. whether you want to start growing blueberries, or you want to create your compost pile, or you want to just do trees, or you have a rodent problem. Believe me, it's a wealth of information. And I think that takes me to about 5 minutes till 7. How'd I do?
You did
I'm
great.
used to so much looking out and seeing reactions. I don't see that.
Yes, it is definitely a different approach when you're doing the Zoom programs. But it's, allows people who may not be able to join us physically attend and get all the really useful information. So we
So do I
appreciate
hit
you.
stop share now?
Leave it on up because I know at least one person has a question that's referring to a slide.
To like a slide?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we'll go right up to the beginning, and you had mentioned about bone meal on the ground. Are pets attracted to bone meal, or is that a pretty pet safe approach?
I'm not 100% sure on that. I've always thought that blood meal is more attracted to the animals. What you can do, what I might recommend is, the little claw hand trowel. I would just claw it up, sprinkle that bone meal on there, and then claw it back to kind of cover it up. And then if you use the watering method to kind of soak it in, I don't think you're going to have too much problem.
Okay. And can you give the naked ladies bone meal as well?
I wouldn't see why not. I would do it on the foliage right now when it's up.
Okay. And then do you cut back the baptisia or false indigo in the spring?
Yes, you can. Usually they'll have the big flowering stalks that are coming out of them. You can cut that stalk all the way back, and yes, you can trim those back.
Okay. We had a great idea pinching the autumn joy sedum.
Took me years to learn that.
And then do you ever fertilize the hibiscus or your hostas?
The hardy hibiscus?
It just says hibiscus. So let's go with that because I know you referenced hardy hibiscus in your presentation.
The hardy hibiscus, yes, you can.
And how about hostas?
Hostas, no, I really don't fertilize those.
Okay.
On the-
easy questions, easy answers. These are
Yeah,
great.
yeah. On the annual hibiscus now, when they're in the pots, yeah, you want to regularly feed those. And it doesn't hurt, like any of your blooming shrubs or anything, if you want to put those liquid feeders on the end of your hose and put some like Miracle-Gro or water soluble fertilizer in those, you can do that and broadcast. Any plant can take up what they call foliage feeding. So you can spray that on the foliage and that plant will take it up and feed, or it will take it up from the root, either one. But one thing I will say is to fertilize and water in the early morning, not at night. A lot more funguses and that type of thing grow at night when the plants are wet, especially on these cold nights. So you always want to get in the habit of watering your pots, your plants, everything early in the morning.
Good tip. How do you plant strawberries? Should they be put on should they be on a mound?
I have seen them put on a mound, but I don't think you necessarily have to. I've seen them planted just flat on the ground before. It might be the variety, maybe the bigger June bearing ones, you might be able to, might want to do the mound, but on the others, the ground spreaders, it can just go on the flat ground if you want.
Okay. And then can you re-show the slide with the newsletter info?
That one?
I believe so. If that's not the slide that you want, or if you want any of the other slides to be shown again, just put that in the chat and we'll have Peggy navigate there. Okay, we had another ask for the newsletter. So there we go. Oh, just some nice comments for you, Peggy. Great job, great work.
Oh, thank you
Good
so much,
information.
everybody. I hope you enjoyed it in the comfort of your own home.
Let's see here. What is our planting zone?
What is our what?
Planting zone?
6B.
I knew we were a 6.
6B. Yes, and that's very important. Any type of perennial, shrub, tree, you want to look for that 6B, because the nurseries will carry like zone 7, 8, 9, things like that. So we just, and it is say perennial on the tag, but it's not a perennial here. It may be a perennial in Florida or California. So look at it that way. And if you can imagine the United States, it starts up at the top, like in Canada, and then those northern states, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, on down to 6, and then 7, 8, is Texas. So if you can kind of think those zones in your head, the higher the number, the hotter the environment is going to have to be for it. So therefore, those perennials will freeze in our environment. So always check that zone 6B, or like somewhere between 4 and 3 and 6 or something like that. Yeah.
Lots of really nice comments. Can you navigate over to the hotline number again? Diane says, I always learn new things from your presentations. It's great to have someone with your training and experience.
Thank you.
Just sharing some nice things. And I will share these comments with Peggy too. So
it's a large topic. It's hard to, try to get it all.
And I'm getting to the end of my question. So if you're holding on to one, don't hesitate and go ahead and throw that into the chat box. Can you go back to the potato info slide? There might have been a couple.
And it's probably not too late to do the potatoes. You could probably still do them. They just recommend I believe for the way they're harvested, to plant them early.
Oh, good. We had somebody comment that they were glad that they got to join us via Zoom. So I'm glad you were able to join us and that everything worked out. I'm glad we're still able to offer that to people. Will we get sent a link when the presentation gets uploaded? We don't typically do that just because we have a lot of other things going on. The question was, will we be sent a link when the presentation gets uploaded to YouTube? But I can tell you it'll be about a week, and then you can just go and everything is searchable on our YouTube page, and it's done chronologically. So this will be one of the latest ones that we put up. More really useful informations.
Thank you.
And can you go back to the slide that showed the 3 types of cuts for trimming?
Oh, sure. There were several different ones. This one is the renewal cut for like lilacs, dogwoods, woodgelias. It's kind of a thinning, get more sun. This is a rejuvenation cut where we cut them all the way down like spireas. And then there's that thinning cut again. You cut back to like a branch or a bud. It's kind of like when I'm trimming roses, I always look for the next down bud to trim. I don't know which one they were kind of referring to. There's
Probably
those
all three. It
three.
said the three different types. Can we see those
Okay.
slides again? So I think you probably,
Renewal, rejuvenation, and the thinning reduction.
yep, she wanted all three. Great.
Okay, cool.
And then for those of you in attendance, Matthew, our partner over at the Extension office, shared a link to our YouTube page. Thank you, Matthew. And then I also put in a link to our evaluation. So if you're trying to cut out a little bit early, I would absolutely appreciate some of these nice comments about being able to learn from the couch. And some of your nice comments for Peggy, you can put there and let us know. And then if you have any other ideas for gardening topics or others, you can share those in the evaluation as well.
Thank you so much, everybody.
We technically are scheduled to go until 7:30.
Okay.
So,
I was going to go back to that zone chart.
oh, perfect.
How's that?
That seemed to have a lot of people with questions.
See how it's zone 1 all the way to the top and then zone 11 all the way down to the bottom. So it kind of goes from top to bottom in our zones. And you can see how our zone kind of goes from up here all the way across. It's the light green.
So can we get away with planting things that would be normally only allowable in zone 5 or zone 7?
We can 5. We zone 7, we're kind of on the border because that's more like to see how it says 0 degrees to 10 degrees.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of, we got minus 18 degrees a couple of years ago, and it stayed down quite a while. And then remember last year, the freeze that all our euonymus turned brown and dead and that type of thing. So the cold is what hurts us the most. So you don't want to plant. If you want to risk it and try something different, you could go with zone 7, but 8, 9, 10, and 11, it's going to die here. And I know purple fountain grass is very popular and everybody plants it in the yard thinking it's a perennial because it says perennial on it, but purple fountain grass here is just an annual. So I just usually plant it in pots. And I see people buying them in the store all the time thinking, because it's pretty, has the purple leaves to it and the plumes on it, but it's not, it's an annual. So always double check that.
What is your opinion on planting elephant ears?
Oh, I love them. I know they're expensive. Some of those bulbs can be like huge and they run $10, $20 a piece, but I absolutely love them. I put them in pots, or you can put them in the ground, either one, but I most commonly put it in a big pot. I usually have it in semi-sun, semi-shade, and then it will actually multiply the bulbs underneath the ground over the year. And so what I would do is I would treat it like a canna bulb, and I would go ahead and at the end of the season, once a freeze comes or before the freeze, go ahead and pull that bulb out of there, cut off actually leave the foliage on there till it turns brown, and then you can cut it off. But just save that bulb in your garage over winter, and then you can replant it next spring. So don't forget it and let it freeze and turn to mush. Go ahead and save it, and you can get many, many years out of it. And it will multiply for you. But no, I love them. Use a pretty big pot.
And then where do you shop for your plants and bulbs?
Oh, a little bit of everywhere, to be honest. Bulbs, I can, I'm probably going to get chastised for this, but I can order them, or Sam's and Costco have come out with some wonderful bulbs. When I look at them, they are very big. They have a see-through package. as long as they're firm and hard and not mushy, they're very good. And of course, all of our good nurseries have them also, that where you can just buy one or two, or you can buy the variety. I don't want to call out one specific company. I don't think I'm supposed to do that.
That's fair.
Well, one tip I can give you, if you are a box store shopper, I like to shop local if I can, but if you are a box store shopper, one tip that I can give you is try to go in on a Thursday afternoon, because Thursday afternoon is when all the stores usually get all their garden material for all the weekend warriors. So if you go on a Thursday or an early Friday morning, you get all the new stuff that came in. But by Sunday, it's all picked over and it probably didn't get watered and it's probably sitting out on a concrete parking lot. So that's one little tip that I might be able to give you.
While we're talking about bulbs, are there some bulbs that you shouldn't be planted close to your house's foundation?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
I would think when you do plant, like I plant my canna bulbs next to the foundation and they actually become more protected. So I've had my canna bulbs come up several years in a row because they are protected. Bulbs don't really get that big, so they're not going to hurt the foundation in any way. Is that what they mean?
I can just read the question.
Okay. Okay.
But if you would like some different clarification, iPhone user, please feel free to put that in the chat and we will move on to the next question about bulbs. Best way to store bulbs over the winter? Would you put them in a paper sack or something else?
Depends on the bulb, I guess, but paper sack is good. You just don't want them to freeze. So I usually, if they're in my garage, I put them like on a protected shelf or something that's a little bit more insulated. Or I've known some people to put them down in their sump pump rooms, that type of thing. Like I said, I like the canna bulbs, that type of thing. I've just taken a little bit of the soil off. You don't want them buried in soil. Tulip bulbs, to be honest with you, I know like Botanica sells them for like 10 cents a piece, that type of thing. And I've had a few customers in the past want me to go get some of those and I planted them. The tulip bulbs just never seem to be like an original bulb you put in. It seems like they always just get the little green foliage, but never produces a flower when I've experienced them and when I've done that in the past. So I don't think it's worth storing tulip bulbs if that's what somebody might be referring to, but any of the other bulbs, yeah. Mainly the cannas, the elephant ears. Those are the two big bulbs that people would normally save.
And then somebody was asking about the case. They finally accessed the K-State Horticulture Center website. And can you remind us what you were recommending folks do there?
The newsletter, maybe?
Was it? I might have been. That's what I was maybe thinking. Is that at the Horticulture Center?
I was going to get to that back slide. I think it was the
Okay.
the newsletter. Yes. Weekly
Yes,
horticultural newsletter. And I think you can, if I'm not mistaken, you log on that and then sign up for it, and then you'll get it via email. If I'm correct.
I'm trying to make sure. I kind of skipped around so we could talk about bulbs for a minute. If hibiscus are sold locally, are they typically hardy rather than the tropical variety?
Well, both. And the tag will normally say hardy hibiscus on it. And if you're in a garden center, it will be separated from the tropical. The tropical is the one that, of course, is going to die in our environment. And that's the one we usually put in pots and that kind of a thing. So just make sure it says hardy hibiscus. And it's usually where all the perennials will show. And if it has a zone on it, that would let you know also. Just make sure you know what you're buying, I guess.
That's probably a good tip for
Yeah,
everything.
they're in a different parts of the store.
My crepe myrtles seem to hang way out. What is the best way to trim them so they are more vertical?
More what?
Vertical?
Vertical. I can go back to this one slide. What I would do is cut off the flaring branches at the bottom. I guess that would be the best way to describe it. Okay, see how, can they still see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, see how this crepe myrtle is kind of bushy all out in here? So what I would do is I would go through and cut off some of these flaring branches and then cut out some in the middle, maybe cut this one off, cut that one off, to where you get more of a streamlined group of branches rather than all the ones that are coming out to the side. That's what I would do. And you could do that now.
Okay.
That's basically what they do when they, I'm sorry, I was thinking of something else.
Oh.
I was thinking of like a hydrangea tree. They actually try to get it into growing one stalk, but you don't want to do that with the crepe myrtle. But you can trim off all those side shoots. And it probably will make it look a little cleaned up a little bit.
Well, you got a big thank you for that one. So I think you answered his question. Do you have recommendations for whitefly invasions? They've tried yellow sticky traps and still are having major challenges.
I know. And let me guess, this is what I found out, is that when you get whiteflies, it's usually in a yard that has fences all the way around it, and it's protected probably, and you don't have very much airflow. So that's where the whiteflies come. You would have to put up too many of those yellow fly traps for it to be effective. Try to get some wind to that area. I believe there's a spray, but I'm not 100% sure, but it's gonna, if he's horticultural, I'm sorry, organic gardener, I don't think it's gonna help it 100% with the whiteflies. They just need air movement to get rid of them with a spray.
Okay.
No, did I answer that? But that's usually when you have whiteflies, is when the area is real protected and it doesn't get a lot of that wind movement.
Well, we have made it to the end of the questions again. Would neem oil work for the whiteflies?
I think that might help. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well,
Again,
let me go
always,
ahead.
whatever chemical you buy, always check the label. And they're pretty good about listing on the label what it's effective for. And then again, with any chemical, you always want to spray early in the morning. You don't want to spray when the sun's out. If it's over, a certain degree, you always want to spray early in the morning when it's cooler.
Any tips for keeping dogs out of flower beds?
For what?
Keeping dogs out of flower beds?
A fence? I had a half lab, half retriever, and she would just go wherever she wanted to go. So I planted in accordance to that. I did a lot of things that she couldn't tear up. A lot of the grasses, hardy, bigger shrubs. If you have a pet that you love and they're in your flower beds, just try to work around them. Electric fence, you know, the hidden fences maybe. Anything to try to deter them. Maybe a little lattice. I don't know if it's a big dog or a little dog, but I think you just have to work around your pet.
I'm having that trouble right now, so I feel that very, very, very deeply.
Do you have any suggestions for us?
No. Yeah, just no. I let her go pretty much wherever she wants to go. So we're not
I
doing
know,
it very well.
you
at all.
really have to. If you have a pet, if you have a dog, that's just what you got to do.
Well, Peggy, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us today.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and just let everybody know I've put the evaluation again in the chat box, and we really would appreciate your feedback on today's session. It sometimes will take a few minutes to load, but it is there, I promise, and we would appreciate your feedback. Thanks again to Peggy
Thank
Griffith
you.
from K-State Research and Extension.
Thank you,
And-
everybody. I appreciate it. It was a first time experience for me.
Well,
Thank you.
I hope it went okay.
Yeah, it did. I hope so. Thank you.
Join us next week for compost and more green gardening practices. You can register for that on our website at wichitalibrary.org/events, or give us a call at 261-8500. And I still don't see any other questions coming in on the chat, so I think we will just cut out a little bit early and let everyone get to their evening. Let me end the recording.